Hello, I'm James McKinney, the creator and host of the Startup Story podcast. Just recently, I had the chance to speak with Jason McCann, founder and CEO of VARI, as we talked about what it will take to maintain growth and leadership in the new normal. This segment was from a live recording during my Fuse Workspace webinar, and we covered quite a bit of ground in our discussion, and it all started with identifying what the new normal even looks like. So if you would like to hear the complete episode, make sure to visit the link to the full episode in the description below. There were actually 3 powerful segments that I wanted to share with you from my time with Jason because I think they bring tremendous value to you as you look forward into 2021. Isn't that crazy that we are at the point in 2020 where we have our eyes locked in on 2021? In this video, I bring 3 key learnings that Jason shared with us during our Fuse Workspace webinar. The first being the idea that crisis creates clarity. Now, I'm sure those words out of context create quite a bit of confusion, and Jason will unpack this learning in great detail. We also talk about what the future of work even looks like. Again, how can we lead in the new normal if we can't fully identify what the new normal is? And again, Jason helps to bring that vision to us. And lastly, we talk about the idea of recovery and resilience. While we have our eyes locked in on what 2021 holds for us, I know 2020 had some devastating impact to many entrepreneurs out there. Look, the Startup Story podcast has over 65,000 listeners across the US, Australia, and the UK. I have heard firsthand from entrepreneurs that were forced to shut down their business because of the impact COVID had to it. What Jason shares with us on the idea of recovery and resilience might be the message you need to hear at this very moment. I am confident these topics will deliver tremendous value to you in your entrepreneurial journey. In fact, I want to deliver even more value to you, so make sure you watch to the very end of this video as I have a special offer to have your business highlighted in an upcoming episode of The Startup Story.
For you as a leader of an organization, a global organization, what has been the greatest learning for you in this incredibly unprecedented time?
Yeah, I think the first thing that hits is a crisis creates clarity. And so you have this moment here when it hits you and you say, okay, all of a sudden, all the distractions, all the maybes that you were kind of working on immediately have to come off your plate. And just where are you going to focus? Because the immediate thing is the health and wellness of your team and the safety of your business. And you've got to have both those things working in sync. Otherwise, nothing works for your team members. So that hit first. The second thing was communication and over communicating. And so immediately identifying where are we going, how are we going to get through this, and then communicating and over communicating with my team members. What I recognized early on was the stress level that I was facing. My team members were facing it even harder, some of them. And so I needed to talk about it and then start to reach out to them for ideas. And so we started daily emails from me from a communication standpoint, and at least weekly meetings via Zoom. Everybody would pipe in email questions so that we could prep. And just like this, I started talking to them. And so that I was being as transparent as possible. These are the challenges we're facing. And as I sat there and I was reading something and I watched a podcast from Patrick Lencioni, he said, we need a rallying cry. And as I was talking to my team, I laid there and said, okay, the night before on a Sunday night, I said, I'd heard back from a good friend of mine, Paul, when they were going through H1N1 and SARS and all these things years ago in Asia. And he said, we've got to keep rowing until the wind catches our sails. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I started writing my notes for the Monday morning all hands meeting, and I rolled with it. And that has become our rallying cry. And to really in this moment to focus, over communicate, and for our teams, you got to keep going. You can't be on your heels. You can't be frozen in fear. We've got to march ahead, keep rowing. Ultimately, we believe from an optimistic standpoint that the wind will catch our sails, we'll get through this, survive it, and ultimately thrive from it and emerge much stronger as a team, as a culture, and as a from a business standpoint, but also helping a lot of different people while we're on this process.
As a leader of an organization, thinking about the employees and some of the things that they might be thinking of during this time, because obviously, people are hearing unemployment numbers and they're hearing, the impact to companies that are laying off. And so they're hearing a lot of things that are somewhat applicable to them as an employee. What types of pieces of communication did you find important besides just the idea that, we have to keep rowing until the wind catches our sails.
Yeah.
This will improve this. Will, what other things were you communicating to your team to give them a sense of peace that, VARI's all right. We've got this. We've got your best interest in mind as our team. And that's how we can really sit in this and row together, because you've addressed some core concerns for them.
Yeah, so the health and safety is number one, and so we talked about that, and I shared the design ideas. These are the things we're working on. This is what we're hearing from Asia. These are the changes that we're going to make from a health and safety standpoint for you as we think about the future of business. So the tools you need for work from home. As you come back, what are we going to do from a business health and wellness standpoint? Openly talking about this isn't working. Our strategy of saying, hey, we're helping clients get an office ready in 28 days. You call us, and in less than sometimes 11 days, we're installing your full office and our walls are ready. Suddenly, well, that wasn't going to work. So the team was like, work from home is where we've got to be and serve others and help people. So we initially said, we're going to transform all of our advertising. We're going to do all new Google ads, update our TV campaign, do a whole work from home pitch. And that worked, and it drove revenue, and it allowed us from a financial perspective to drive increased revenue. So that allowed our company to start to see, okay, from a financial standpoint, we can also be healthy and safe. And so talking about those things with the team members, say, hey, this is not working. This part of the business may be down 20, 30%. This part of the business is up 200-300%. How do we wrestle with all those facts and being as transparent as possible and saying it's going to be okay? We also said, okay, we were planning on hiring a lot of people, and instead we said, okay, we're going to slow down our hiring process, or we're going to continue to hire salespeople. And in the middle of COVID, I think we've hired over 25 people in the last 3 months, while others haven't hired anybody, and they've laid off. So we sort of said, wow, there's going to be incredible talent out there. The other thing is serving others. In the middle of this was we donated over $400,000 worth of product to schools, to, we heard about Dallas Independent School District, others that needed help. So we said, how do we get product out to teachers and marker boards for their home? Because they're all trying to find it. And so just the art of giving and serving others helped. And my recruiters had a touch of bandwidth because we weren't going to recruit quite as many people during this. So we said, if you know a loved one that's been impacted, send your resume to my team. They're going to, and us and all the leaders, we can all lean in, look at their LinkedIn profile, look at their resume, and help them connect and find a job. Because again, we've got to help the overall serving others and getting them healthy as well. So all those things, I think, are related to what has helped us get through this on multiple levels, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. It's been incredible.
And I read headlines like REI announcing that they're selling their brand new unused 8-acre corporate campus in, I think it's Bellevue, Washington. And I know they're not the only ones that are making major announcements in the way that the corporate workspace has changed. But when I read headlines like that, I just can't help but ask the question, what does the workspace of the future look like? And you, of all people, I believe is on the forefront of that, looking out into the future of what that looks like. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing is it's all built around flexibility and change. So one, it's going to continue to evolve. We're going to learn more. Vaccines, the way social distancing, better and better technologies are coming, thermal scans, the cleaning, all of those things are going to continue to happen. So from a space standpoint, it's going to continue to change. And so I continue to see it as today, it may be a lot more people working from home. There are a lot of pros that have been learned from it. There are also cons, that things that aren't working that we're seeing out there, but tools are starting to come out. And so creating that seamless integration between wherever you work, whether it's your home space, your third space, maybe it's a co-working like Fuse or at Starbucks, or you're at something different, even like what we have at VARI Space. And so finding these different ways that businesses are going to continue to evolve and operate. A lot of clients we're doing now 2 designs for. So one, I would call it sort of a get back to now phase. What does it look like? Less dense, more spaced out, collaboration spaces that may have 6-foot distancing between them. But what does future space look like? So what could the space evolve to maybe in the next 12 to 18 months? So maybe the density is less dense right now. Maybe my teams will only come in 2 or 3 days a week and have collaboration spaces or needs. But long term, a lot of people are recognizing that the social capital that's built by us having human connections that are making, versus all of us being siloed and sitting in our rooms at home. A lot of that's being lost right now. So how do we rebuild that and make those connections so when it is possible and when it is safer, what's it going to look like? So a lot of clients were already starting to see, okay, this is what it's going to look like today. But in the next 6, 12, 18 months, and I think that's why you're seeing companies like REI or Amazon continue to think about spaces. And so they're looking for decentralized models that may be closer to residential. Some will continue to be centralized. And I think it's going to continue to ebb and flow and change over the next few years. It's definitely not going to be stagnant.
Do you think, I mean, as I think through the getting back to work, and again, as a solopreneur, my scenario is a bit different than the corporate entities. But when I think of the idea of getting back, I feel as though companies like Fuse, workspaces that are collaborative, month to month in some cases, just pop in and work, dynamic workspaces. I feel like those become more and more important. Again, you're in that space, you're outfitting those types of organizations. Do you agree with that sentiment? Do you see something different when it comes to the way companies utilize those spaces?
No, I think they're going to continue to. I think a lot of companies are finding that or individuals are finding it's very challenging to work only at home all the time, or only in even one space all the time. So what are those other areas where collaboration and communication and culture can really happen? Where can I build those relationships at? So I do see a very decentralized model evolving here very quickly. And so I think it will go through a transition. It will continue to ebb and flow and what that means. But areas like Fuse and these others that are localized and in these certain markets and any space that clients can kind of get out, the teams can get out of their house or meet and find areas to collaborate are definitely going to happen. And I see even larger enterprise level spaces that are going to continue happening. So we're seeing a lot of clients come in and say, okay, we may not be back today, but they're not thinking about 3 months from now. They're thinking about 3 and 5 years from now. So how do we create a space that's going to be flexible and ebb and flow? How do we continue the training, the onboarding, recruiting and retaining talent? How do we continue to evolve the culture over time? And those spaces are necessary. So where are those going to happen? Those are not going to be on your laptop in your bedroom.
I can't tell you how many Zoom calls I've been on where the headboard is their backdrop. We've seen a lot of economic cycles, right? And in this season, there are businesses that have had to shutter. They've had to close. They've had to wrap things up. And that could be a challenging space mentally. I'd like to ask you from your own personal experience, how do you pull yourself out of those spots coming out of a failed business?
Yeah, so I think if you go bust, I think you have to treat it like, okay, it wasn't your time, it wasn't your hand, this wasn't your moment. You may or may not have made the right choices, and you have to learn from it. And you've got to, you take that weekend to sulk about it. It took me a few months back in the late 90s to get through the .com bust, but it's just a healing period. But you got to get back up, got to get back on the horse, is what my mom would say. Dust off and go out and do it another one. I was talking to somebody the other day, Rohan, one of my interns here, and there's a great musician, I think it was the Eagles, one of the writers, and he said, well, how do you create great songs? Well, you write a bunch of bad ones first. Like, you just start writing. And so going through some of those things and those learnings, and I don't think you get that always at 20 or 25 or 30, but when you have an opportunity, you make all those mistakes and you learn from them. And now I'm sharing them with my team so that hopefully we're all making better decisions, so that I'm coaching up the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs out there so that they can help me build something fantastic. And we're going to just keep going. So if you do happen to go bust, I promise it'll be okay. It's going to hurt. You have to circle the wagons and play defense and dig out of it and do crazy jobs just to survive, but you will get through it. So find your next opportunity and go for it and keep going. You've got to keep moving onward, as my team says.
I hope you found this content helpful. And if you did, then please make sure to subscribe to the Startup Story podcast on your platform of choice so you can hear the episode in its entirety. With close to 100 founder interviews to choose from, I am confident you will find one that will be helpful to your entrepreneurial journey. I mentioned earlier that I have a special offer for you, and it requires nothing from you except your time. Every episode of the Startup Story, I read a listener review from Apple Podcasts. If you visit the Startup Story show on Apple Podcasts and leave a written review, I will read it in an upcoming episode. And here's the best part. If you insert your URL, social media accounts, or company name, then that segment will be inserted into the startup story and live on for years to come. It's basically a free advertisement for your business or brand within the startup story. I hope you'll subscribe to the show as well as follow us on all the many social media platforms. I say it in every episode because I believe it. Entrepreneurs support other entrepreneurs, and we're here to support you.